In this lesson, I'm going to explain how you can work with opacity, thereby creating some transparency in a 3D object, and also using refraction, bending light as it goes through the object. To follow along, let's go to Working Files and go to Photoshop Projects and open up opacity.psd. All right, we have this sphere with a backdrop and a floor. I put in this floor to act as a ground plane because a custom-made ground plane works a little more realistically than the default ground plane that you get when you work with a 3D object without a true ground plane. So here we go. Let's click on the sphere once with the selection tool and one more time to select its material. There we go. Pull this down a bit so you can see all of them. And there's opacity and refraction. We're going to work with those two guys here. First of all, let's just lower the opacity. So let's take this and slide it to the left down to about 50% or so, making it partially transparent. And you can see the draft view, the OpenGL rendering here. It doesn't really give you the complete view, but it gives you kind of an attempt to show you what it looks like. Let's render that by just clicking on this little render button. Give it a few passes. Usually the first 4 passes go by kind of quickly, and the 4th or 5th one sort of slows down a bit. Then it starts looking better on the 4th or 5th pass, but then obviously it gets very, very slow here. So we'll stop at about this point. And if you take a look at that, you're probably thinking, okay, I can see that it's transparent. That's nice, but it doesn't look real like a sphere. It looks more like a wafer. You do get this lighting here, so there is some kind of shading, so it does have a sense of a sphere, but it looks more like a wafer because you're looking straight through, and if you had a sphere here, it probably would refract the light a little bit. So to deal with that, we click on it with the selection tool again one more time, and we're going to adjust the refraction. Right now it's set to 1 by default. 1 means there's no bending of the light. That's like looking through air. But if you want to change it to how it looks when you look through water, for example, you change it to about 1.3. 1.33 would be actually pretty close to correct, but that's good enough for now. Right now you don't see the bending yet, but we do need to render it to see that. So I'll click on the little render button here. We'll watch that. And right off the bat, you can see, now it's beginning to look like an honest to goodness sphere. Yes, indeed. Okay, we'll let it go one more time here, and then we'll let it stop. Now there is this little anomaly that happens when you work with transparency and refraction. The light is being bent, and you see the Photoshop transparency checkerboard there off in the distance. That's not this checkerboard here, or the floor checkerboard. That's the transparency checkerboard that you see off to the edge. I'll take a look at that by clicking away here to select the current view, and we'll rotate it like that. And there's the transparency that's showing up inside the sphere. Now you can overcome that by building out the walls here or putting walls around it. But for the most part, when you reduce the opacity, you get some transparency, and then you add some refraction. You're going to bend the light, and you're going to see that little checkerboard. So be aware that'll happen. You need to compensate for it in some way by building out the wall or putting an extra wall here, something like that. Now, usually when you work with transparency like this, you might have a little bit of a reflection on the surface. I mean, transparent things sometimes are a little reflective. So let's just take a look at how that looks when you add reflection. Click on it one more time here to get its material, and let's increase the reflection to 20, 30%, something like that. There we go. Let's render that and see how that works. Now it's going to get a little confusing because not only will we see what's through it, but it's also going to reflect things. So we're going to get the floor reflected on it down here, and we're going to get this floor showing up here, and all kinds of stuff going on when you do reflection as well. And lots of times you do have color when you work with something like this. It's nice to add a little color to it, give it a little bit of life. Click on it again. And as long as the diffuse texture file is the default one with the transparent layer, you can just click on the color swatch here and add some color. So we'll add some blue, for example. There we go. We'll render that now too. See how that works? Lovely. So that's how you deal with opacity on an overall level. But you can also deal with opacity using a texture file. You can make parts of an object transparent. So I'm going to go select this material again. I'm going to use a preset. I'm going to go over here to the presets like that and select this one right there because it has some transparency, some opacity built in. I'll click on that. And it puts these holes here. Let me show you how that works. We have an opacity texture file here. That's what creates those holes. We also have a bump file. I'm going to turn that off to make sure there's no confusion here by removing that texture and just stick with the opacity map here. To see that, let's open it up. Open up the texture file. Click this little drop-down guy there and say Edit Texture. Let's put them side by side so you can see what's going on. We have the window, arrange, and 2 up vertical. She has a bunch of black dots. I'll click that layer so you can see it's black, like so, with this little sort of mesh on top, but you can barely see it when I turn off the bottom layer, but it creates those little holes like that. And those holes create this transparency here. Wherever it's black, you've got a hole. You've got some transparency. Let me show you that at work. Let me click on the shape layer now and go over here to Controller Command T Just like that. And I'm going to pull them way out here, holding down the Alt or the Option key and the Shift to kind of keep things centered and proportional. Now I've got these giant dots. Accept that by pressing the Enter key in the numeric keypad. Now we've got that. Now I'm going to click over here and see what happens. Big holes. That's how that works. I need to draw in here. When I click on this, though, it's going to tell me it's a shape layer. So I need to rasterize it. There you go. Now we're fine. Take the brush here. Right now it's gray. I want to change that to black. I'm going to press D for the default colors, and now I'll draw here with a big X. Let's see what happens over here. Click on you. Rotate you around like so. Oh my gosh. So there's the X we just carved in there. Wherever it's black, it's transparent. Now I'm going to make something gray. We'll see what happens there. Go back over here. Get the brush tool again. Let's make it gray by clicking down here and picking a nice gray color like so. I'm going to draw around the outside here like that. And we'll see what happens with gray. Go back over here. And if you see that, it looks like it kind of makes it partially transparent. So gray makes things sort of partially transparent. I'll render that. So you can kind of see through it, but not easily see through. It's not completely transparent, it's partially transparent. So gray is a gradation of transparency, whereas black makes it absolutely transparent. So that's how you work with opacity, and also how you can throw in some refraction to bend the light through a transparent object.